You're
What's
deaf
going
now.
on, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Monday night. Action Movie Anatomy here.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's the show formerly titled The Action Guys.
I feel like the smartest thing to do with the podcast is start with a loud, jarring sound as soon as it starts.
New listeners would like that.
New listeners will stay. New listeners will stay.
Yes.
We've rebranded here in 2023.
Indeed.
We haven't. What's up, everybody? It's the Action Guys. Salute. Happy New Year. Happy 2023. The holidays are over. Avatar came out 13 years later. Is that what it is?
13 years later.
You know what I found out, which
What?
was really cool? My sister told me, she's like, do you remember where you saw Avatar the first time? And I thought it was like not a rhetorical question. It was a rhetorical question. I thought it was a sincere question. And I was like, she was like, we saw it at the same theater 13 years ago in Utah.
Really?
Yeah. I saw it at the exact same theater, which is really cool because I
For
remember
like a Christmas thing.
Yeah, of course,
yeah.
because it came out like December 18th or something like that, I think, back then. And yeah, so that was cool. How were your holidays, man? You were oot in a boot.
I was.
Is that how they speak in Italy?
I was going to say it that way, but I'm glad that you did instead.
I'm worldly.
Yeah, you are. You're learned. Yes, I went to Italy. Went to Rome. I had some travel mishaps on my trip to and from, but ultimately, really excited to be home. And there was some fun times there. It was nice to see my family. You know, I had a nice hotel. We'll leave it at that.
Travel mishaps in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like everyone had pretty bad. Ash had some travel mishaps. Shout out to Ash. It's our 4-year anniversary tonight, and this is what I'm doing
Right now?
right now.
4-year anniversary.
4 years together.
Do you think she's watching in the chat?
100% no. After 4 years,
Drew,
definitely. She's
wish her a happy anniversary just in case she's watching.
Happy anniversary, Ashley. I love you. I'm sure you're watching.
I hope she's in the chat.
She used to watch.
Yeah.
You know, but after 4 years,
She-
it's a lot of videos.
I get nervous when I go on dates to share any of my social media because I don't want them to find anything. Because I feel like the combination of like just the sheer numbers of hours of streams, Schmodown personality. I have a Magic the Gathering
Schmodown
podcast.
personality thing was like a thing. I remember because I was single back
Yeah.
when that started.
Yeah.
You know, and there were people that had found the videos. Ashley also looked me up on the internet and found Schmodown Drew. She really wanted to make sure that I wasn't really short and that I didn't have a really high voice. She's going to be upset that I've told people this, but for some reason, those things mattered to her. Because, I don't know, she thought I was a catfish.
I don't think it's anywhere near as funny as her first dirty picture to you being her in a llama costume.
And it wasn't dirty.
No.
It was, there's parentheses there for everyone in the chat. It was like we were talking early on in our relationship, like in the first couple weeks, and she told me she was wearing like a llama onesie. And I was like, oh. And I like texted and I was like, okay. It's like, you should send me a picture.
You're like, picture didn't happen.
And it was just like the most wholesome picture of her just wearing a llama onesie with like a head and everything.
It's when you knew she was the one.
I did. I was like, well, this girl's a keeper. So, 4 years, which I'm excited about. We're going to go eat Korean noodles, which is also another reason why she's a keeper. But first, I'm keeping her waiting so that we can talk about Avatar, The Way of the Water.
I wanted to do like a Na'vi accent just now, but very similar to the first film, it feels offensive when I do it.
The Way of the Water?
That's Wakanda,
Wait,
maybe?
what? We just did it. Dating someone in the industry is its own beast. Yeah, it really is. It really is. So I agree. Especially because if you go back and watch our first episode, we did a lot of Jake Sully.
Jake Sully.
Do your Wakandan accent, Ben. That's what I was trying to. I was trying to egg it out of him. PLD. I needed it. Shout out to PLD in the chat.
PLD. When I went back to watch, I rewatched our first Avatar episode that we did, 2019. By the way, anybody who's watching this, if you ever have a curiosity of a movie that we like, if we ever did a full review like this of it, we probably did. We did 250 episodes of the show. There's a great catalog, and it's hilarious to go back and watch some of them. That one in particular, PLD, was the week you had changed your Twitter handle to PLD.
It was a revolution in the Twitter sphere.
It was a big moment. You embraced it. You decided you were going to just be welcome to PLD Projects. I'm Paul Denuzio. You can all call me PLD. And I thought it was incredible.
It was amazing because he used to just be Paul Denuzio or Paul Denuzio. We didn't know. We realized that there was like an extra I missing one day in the chat, and we were like blown away by it. And then he just became PLD.
A brand.
A global brand. We have it live captured on film. Indeed. So, let's get into Action Movie Anatomy here. But first, we got to shout out all of our generals that were there supporting us when we started doing the action, guys, because this is kind of a hybrid of the two shows. We're obviously going to talk about Avatar: The Way of the Water for the rest of this, and there will be a lot of spoilers. So, if you haven't seen it, it's Avatar. I don't really know how much things we could spoil. There's like one or two things that you might want to hold off on. So anyway, big shout out to our generals, Paul Denuzio, John Getz, Jake Yakoveta, Mac Ryan, Alex and Lucas Shawshek, and Aj Lancaster. Big time salute to you guys. And of course, Mike Deacon, Bethany Curl, Liam Gilpin, Luke, Marshall Haynes, Andrew Hayes, Danny Joyce, Kelsey Kirkland, Sarri, Laman Maki, Jeremiah Morris, John Patterson, Eric Ritz, Oscar Romo, and Cody Seal. And if you guys... Yeah, big time salute. If you guys want to know what we're talking about there, patreon.com/team action. Moving forward after this episode, because we have to take a week off again because of travels and the new year. You're going to be traveling a lot in the new year, but
yes,
we will be putting these shows. The live show will be private on our Patreon for our $5 patrons and above, but then the episode will be posted later on that night for everyone that doesn't want to join the Patreon. But that'll be a way for us to be able to interact with the live chat more. And also, we are going to put up a poll for the next episode that we're going to cover. What movie is it? We'll put up a poll of like 4 or 5 movies.
Yeah, I think you can. PLD maybe knows better than we do at this point, but you used to be able to do 4 poll options on Patreon. You might be able to do 5 now. It'll definitely be at least 4 if you can't do the 5th. And yeah, you guys will vote on that, and there'll be 4 movies that are all either in the catalog or something new that fits like this. And you guys will be able to check that out. We'll talk about that a little later in the show with a special segment. Just wink to the camera.
Did you say you just winked at the camera?
I did.
Okay.
I did with this eye, though, so you couldn't see it.
You can do a ton of... I saw it. There's a screen here. There's a screen in front of us where I can see everything that both of us are doing as I get shorter by the minute. I did like 15 the other day, PLD says. Okay, good to know. Maybe one day we'll be able to afford a new chair. Here we go. Avatar: Way of the Water, Action Movie Anatomy 2.0. Ben, what are the rules of Action Movie Anatomy?
We cover action movies on this show that adhere to 4 basic rules. Rule number 1, the hero always plays by their own rules.
Who is the true hero of this film? It's Jake Sully.
No, it's the Sully family. Because Sully stick together. I do still think it is Jake Sully. Even though actually Neytiri feels like she's...
It's like Zoe Saldana's like way more of a badass and so much more hinges on her. But clearly the story does follow the protagonist is Jake Sully.
He kind of doesn't play by his own rules in this movie. I hate to say it. His first instinct is to run. That's the first thing that happens. He decides he needs to protect his family. He's going to run. He's going to denounce his position as...
But yeah. I mean, also though, it sounds like he's playing by his own rules because people don't do that in that world.
That's fair, but then he also
they even say this, tree people don't hang out with water people, bro.
But then he goes to the water people and it becomes a bitch also.
Well, I don't know if we should say that about Jake Sully.
He's like immediately is like, go apologize and like have respect and stop standing up and like getting in fights.
Playing his mind game. I don't know. Let us know in the chat. Does Jake Sully play by his own rules? I'll stop doing it soon. All right, what's the next rule?
Rule number 2, the hero and the villain are always the smartest people, beings, dinosaurs, what have you, in the room. That one I do think because... he has to go and plays a long game to defeat Stephen Lang.
For all the reasons you just said he doesn't play by his own rules, they are the smarter decisions to make, right?
Yes.
He does need to go there. He does need to bow down to those people. He does need to play by their rules, I guess. Like, he needs to learn the way of the... Oh, my God.
The Way of the Water.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I got to say the name of the movie. I'm that guy.
And Stephen Lang, who is the villain, definitely the smartest in the room. For sure, without a doubt, Stephen Lang. I mean, literally, and I guess this is one of the spoilery things, guys. I would expect at this point you would not be watching this episode if you didn't want to be spoiled. So 3, 2, 1. He comes back from the dead. He defeats
I don't know if
death.
I don't know if that's a spoiler. I feel like we knew that in the trailer.
I didn't know he was in it.
Really?
We thought he wasn't. We talked about it on air. We were like, it's disappointing that he's not in the movie because he wasn't billed.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's video
I thought I
footage.
saw the trailer. I guess I mean, I'm sure I did. But for some reason, Frederick's saying it was in the marketing. For some reason, when I saw him in the movie, I was like, duh. Maybe it's because I saw another trailer maybe after we filmed the episode. I don't know. Because when I saw it, I wasn't surprised.
Interesting.
And when I looked it up online, he's there.
I knew he was because I had heard, I think, but up until like 2 months ago, I didn't know.
Yeah. That's so weird to me.
Yeah.
I really feel like we would have known. Anyway, wow, this is why you're listening to our show. But anyway, the hero and the villain are always the smartest people, beings, creatures, whatever in the room. They are.
Yeah. Rule number 3, the movie is driven by police, military, political, or mercenary figure. In this case, Jake Sully is military.
Well, yeah, he
is. I mean, he is a classic, he's a classic Marine, but he
was.
also, on top of that, is part of the Navy military, basically.
Nice.
So, and then remember, for the movie contains a minimum of one explosion. A James Cameron film would be incomplete without an explosion.
Yeah.
In fact,
is there a James Cameron film without an explosion? Don't worry, I won't make that face anymore.
the only one I could really think of, and I wonder if someone in the chat knows this, because none of the ones in our lifetime, they all have explosions. I mean, I imagine there's at least one explosion in Titanic. I think
and he is a political figure. Good job, PLD. Jessica Cowan. I'm with Andrew on this one. By running away, he's not playing by the typical Earthling rules of masculinity. Interesting. I like that. Starting strong in 2023.
Maybe Piranha 2 doesn't have an explosion, but it probably does. So this movie obviously fits all the rules.
Maybe we weren't sad. We weren't happy that we weren't going to see Stephen Lang's person in it because it was dead.
Yeah,
maybe I knew he was gonna, because I feel like in the trailer it shows him as the Na'vi. Anyway, point being, we're glad they brought him back. They pulled a Raid 2 on us, and you brought back Mad Dog because you have to. Because I don't, and I think with the way, again, spoilers, I do think with the way that this movie ends, it's really the only interesting, because I was thinking, if Stephen Lang dies in this movie, who can be a great next villain? Like, what can actually be that good? And I just want their battle to keep going on forever, right? I mean, like, Spider, as he gets older, can maybe take over in, like, 4 and 5. That's probably the plan, because Stephen Lang will be pretty old by then. But I'm glad he's back for this, and apparently number 3.
Yeah, it seemed important once he was back doing the thing to continue on. And I'm sure early, because they kill him in the first movie, I'm sure there was conversations about it. But
yeah, I bet they almost. I mean, again, this is one of those things where it's like we don't do a ton of the research on the back like story of this because that's not really what this show's about. But it's like we definitely knew Lane was back. The way they brought him back was kind of weak sauce. Yeah. I totally lost my train of thought because I was reading that, but anyway.
So the next part of the show is something we do called thesis statement. This is your biggest, boldest thought about the film. You come out of the movie, you think about it, you really construct your strongest opinion. It's not your favorite part. It's not some weak sauce opinion. Just used your word there, PLD. It is the strongest, the biggest, the best, the first, the last, the only, something like that. Hyperbolic almost. And I'm going to let you go first because I liked yours. I thought it was very interesting. I'd like to have that discussion.
James Cameron is a god. No. Was that hyperbolic enough? I'm making the face again. Man, I'm really sad I forgot my point. But yeah, so for my thesis statement, I thought it's so crazy because you and I are getting older. Yeah. And it's really starting to show.
And it's really obvious.
It really is obvious. It's starting to show in terms of the way we look, but also in the terms of like our taste in the directors that we grew up with. It's like a lot of these guys that we grew up with as like the leading directors, they're getting towards the end of their careers. And while James Cameron, it seems like definitely has a lot more time left in his career, which I'm happy about, it does seem like he's going to be spending the majority of that time on Avatar films, right? So my thesis statement is James Cameron's legacy is going to be completely handcuffed to our at-home entertainment technology limitations, capabilities, if you will. And the reason that I say that is already I feel like people don't talk about aliens in T2 in the generation younger than us, the Gen Zers. I don't really hear them talking about it a lot. Obviously, everyone in like the film space and the Twitter film space, they're going to talk about those movies as the great things that they are for probably a while. But I really wonder, like, the next generation and then the generation after that, right? Because if you want to be remembered forever, you know, in the same way that maybe, like, we looked at Kubrick or something like that, or maybe how we looked at, you know, Coppola. Coppola's kind of weird but anyway, those guys that like when we were growing up, they'd already been making movies for a very long time. That's kind of where like the next generation and the generation after that are looking at James Cameron, and it's going to be spent all watching Avatar movies and only seeing Avatar movies, and maybe they'll be inclined to go back and watch Aliens and T2 and a lot of the other, like Titanic, just because it's so big. But like, I don't know, man. I think his legacy is directly handcuffed to our ability to watch movies at home and how grand they can be. Because if we can at home have that 3D holy shit visual experience with surround sound, which I'm sure a lot of us, and again, this has to be like the average human's level, because I understand that there's like millionaires out there that can buy like, you know, $100,000 TVs that have like crazy 3D and all. Most people cannot do that.
Yes.
Right? But it needs to get to the point where the average person can do that. And if that happens, which I'm sure it will, you know, eventually, but it needs to happen sooner rather than later for us to remember and like for the next generation of people to remember like how great James Cameron is. Because Avatar movies are not doing anything story-wise that are mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's all about the visual experience.
It is all about the visual experience, and I think that that's sort of one of the great strengths and weaknesses of this movie. I think we'll get into that a bit more when we start to talk about sort of the actors involved, we start to talk about the fist pump moments. I do really think that and I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to add to your point now with my thesis. And I thought about this quite a bit, and I just sort of audibled out of, I was going to talk about something to do with the faces and the mocap and the technology, because he's talked a lot about it, and it is one of the most remarkable things about this movie, no doubt, and we'll talk about it a bit more. But the thing that really stood out to me is every conversation I've had about Avatar 2, leading up to it in theaters now, and even the what did you think of it, has to do with the box office. No director is more directly tied to his box office legacy than James Cameron, and I think it's a negative. I think now, because of what's happened with his last 3 films, he's made in the last 25 years, he's made 3 movies. He's made Titanic, he's made Avatar 1, he's made Avatar 2. You throw in Aliens of the Deep, and I think he did 1 other documentary, but he's made 3 theatrically released blockbuster films. 2 of them have been the highest grossing film of all time. All the conversation surrounding this movie was it going to make enough money? How much money was it going to make?
Well, and because it costs so much money and time.
And I think that hurts these movies. I think with Titanic, it was kind of remarkable that it made the money that it did. And it's obviously this big movie. It's a special movie. It's very long. By the time Avatar came out, it blew our minds, and I think that's why people watched it. But the fact that it made as much money as it did was like, oh, cool, now James Cameron is officially that guy.
Yeah.
Now that's his thing. It's his legacy. His movies all make money. Don't bet against James Cameron. I think if this movie, or even really to some degree the first Avatar, had made less money, like if the first Avatar had made like $900 million, $1.2 billion, people would be much more willing to be like, that movie's not that good. I think they would be willing to be like, that movie's really great to look at. It's not that interesting. I've seen this movie before.
Right.
And I think that this movie does more. I like a lot of what's going on in this movie more, but I think the same thing. If this movie totally failed at the box office, like it's going to succeed now because it's already at a pretty high number. But if this movie looked like it was going to cap at like $1 billion or something, I think people would be more willing to call this movie kind of a bit of a flop. And I just think his career is so affected by this concept of this like blockbuster director.
Well, okay, so if this movie did or did not have the blockbuster, you know, the money making thing tied to it, do you think that people would give him more credit because it's visually stimulating and like a good entertaining movie, or do you think people would still just like, or does James Cameron, you know, is the real thesis like no one loves to hate James, like no director do people love to hate more than James Cameron for some reason.
I think it really has to do with the fact that if this movie was just average at the box office, then I think people would be much more willing to actually discuss the movie. Right now, the only thing anybody says is it's visually incredible and it's made a lot of money. I don't hear anybody saying shit about anything else. The performances have not come up. Mm-hmm. I've not heard how good the story is. I've not really heard much other than it's amazing to look at and it's making a lot of money. And that's like, I think it's like a bit of like an unfair knock on the movie to focus on those 2 things only, because it just invalidates everything else. I mean, it's a 3-hour experience. You know, there are emotional moments. There are fist pumps. We're going to get into fist pump here in a second. But I do believe no director has been more closely tied to his box office success than James Cameron. And maybe that's obvious, but I think it's to his detriment a little bit at this point. I think,
yeah, of course. I mean, if that's not... that's not the reason you're supposed to want to make movies, right?
Right.
And I don't think that's the reason that James Cameron wants to make movies, even though I think he has to know that he has to make an insane amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So the next section of the show is one that is a little bit more exciting, and it is something called fist pump moment. Something happens while you're watching the movie, and you just look around, and you're like, are you seeing this right now? Yes! I get to watch the rest of this movie. I'm so fucking in. Obviously, you're hoping you're getting to watch it with someone. Sometimes you call your buddy, get them on the phone, whatever. In my theater, there was an audible... there was like applause.
Yeah.
People cheered.
Yeah.
And it made me so happy when it happened. I got kind of teary-eyed because those are those moments in movie theaters when you're watching where it's like, this is the point. This is why these places...
They've unified us against this common evil.
And it's why these, like I don't go to church. I'm not religious whatsoever. The movie theater experience with a group like that is like, for me, that experience of sharing something with a group of like-minded people.
Yeah.
When those moments happen and we all cheer and everybody's feeling the same emotional thing, that's really special. And I think it's one of the biggest reasons, where movie theaters are so important. And that's one of the things James Cameron needs to be really respected for is like, he's one of the few guys that just his name alone, gets this franchise made, gets people in the theater to see this movie because they believe it. So for me, it was the moment where the hunter, the whale hunter, what were those things called? Takano? Somebody help me out. The sweet, super intelligent whales with the genius brains. When the hunter, who is like just all about let's make some money, when he's fighting our sweet whale and it just wrecks him, and it just wrecks him.
Yeah.
Jumps over, the cable like rips through the boat. God, it was sweet.
Yes.
It's like slowly ripping through it, and you're like, Tukun. And it's ripping through the boat, and you're like, God, how strong is that cable? It's ripping this boat in half.
I mean, you see in other movies, like the classic, like those cables cutting people in half.
Yeah,
That's like happened in Die Hard movies, I'm sure.
And so he's getting like, and he's like getting pressed against the thing, and then it breaks through, and as he's midair, his arm rips off.
It gets pinned. Yeah, it gets pinned to the thing. Oh, it's so good.
It was such a good moment, and you just hate that guy. Every single time, anywhere in any movie, if you hurt an animal, you want that person to die.
And like, the other thing is like, I don't know if anyone has done a better job of making you like love. It's because this character is the character of the Tikkun, the main Tikkun, which whatever its name is, I can't remember again. Again, if you guys want to let us know in the chat what the name is, like I loved that character.
Yeah,
like I felt its heart, and it's like, oh, they can just talk to each other. I don't care. Cool, totally in, totally down, and like, yeah, the moment of it getting its revenge, I think my theater did cheer as well. I just didn't even think about it.
Yeah,
you can't fist pump with no arms, right? Yeah, big shout out to you, director, big time salute. That's a great moment. I love that moment. You knew it was coming.
Yes.
Right? You're like, this asshole's going to get it. But you and I, Payakon, Payakon. You and I were talking about just like how sophisticated and kind of cool the Sky People's like method of hunting the whales were, right? It was like this crazy juxtaposition of like there were all these people trained for what they were doing and like this badass work, and how many people had to work together as a team to take down these whales that were giving people infinite life back on Earth. Like this incredibly important mission if you're a human, right? But then the other view of it of like how destructive, like you were talking about that picture, how it's like basically a beautiful like picture, like a painting of when all the Sky People were coming to the planet. And that was another moment of like, look at these people trying to like, again, like if you're a human, this is like they're all back on Earth watching like, here we go, guys, whereas like we watch it from the Navi and it's like just ripping the world apart. But that beautiful shot of all the Sky People coming down was so cool.
It really does remind me a lot of like, because I saw this great interview. You guys want to look it up. I don't exactly know where it was. It might have been one of those variety, like actors on actors, directors on directors things. But it was Denis Villeneuve having a conversation with James Cameron, and they were talking about the visual imagery of Dune, and Cameron was complimenting him so much and saying all these nice things. And Denis was like, "Yeah, I got that from Avatar. Like, that's a thing that I saw in that, and I wanted to do that." And you realize these guys who have because we're creative people. You're an actor, I'm a musician. We've both been hosts for a long time. We have a good idea of being able to sort of conceptualize something, but conceptualize something kind of small compared to what these guys are doing in your brain to be like, I'm going to spend 5 years of my life putting something together, and I'm going to stick to that vision so closely that these things that I imagine, these images that I want to show, it's going to take me like several years to get that image. But when I get it, I'm going to know I got exactly what I wanted.
And like the brains behind it, I was saying Guillermo is known for creating these beautiful like creatures, these little monsters he talks about. But it's like James Cameron, he's created these incredible like industrial creatures. When you watch this movie, you look at the Sky People, the things that build the buildings, the submarines, all of it together. The harpoon that explodes. Everything is just so freaking cool. Even though it's terrible. So my fist pump moment was, I really liked what you were saying about like the religious experience.
Yeah,
that is like what it is, and it's funny because when someone talks about a fist pump moment or a religious experience in film, they always talk about the cap and the hammer. I think I saw Tate type that out, which of course that really was maybe one of the biggest cheers I've ever had in a theater. But so my fist pump was a true religious moment, and it's not even anything spectacular. I told you about it. It's weird. It's the first time that the two parties of the Na'vi meet. It's the kids out, and then they see Stephen Lang and his troop going to the old place where Stephen Lang died originally as a human. And it's after the encounter starts, and there's a moment where there's like the minigun on the truck, I think, and it's like, and it's like the minigun bullets, they're going so fast it almost looks like a laser. And it's like down the center of the screen, and you've just like moved through the woods on the ground. Like I love all the on the ground stuff, like right next to the people. And I was just watching it because when I first got there, me and my family, I think we came with like 13 people, and we had to sit all separated, and we were definitely closer than I wanted to be. And when it first started, I was like, oh man, we're like really close, and it's kind of even messing with the 3D, and it's giving me a headache. And like I was like, maybe we're just gonna have to bow out. Like I almost was like gonna get my phone out and text my family like we should just leave. I was like, no, I'll just stick it out. And so after sticking it out for like 5 minutes or so, I was like, yes, 3D is fine. It's okay. Like this is the only movie I ever see in 3D or James Cameron Avatar movies. And then this movie happened with the minigun and the fighting and like the edge of your seat action, like the thrill ride that James Cameron will always put you on. He gets right into the action, right? He doesn't waste a lot of time. He gives you a little bit of exposition, and then he gets right into the issue and adds stakes, and it's beautiful, and it's like something you've never seen before in theaters, and I almost teared up in that moment, and that was my true fist pump moment. So I can't wait to go back and watch it and have like a more, specific one, like, the arm getting cut off. But that for me was my, like, oh, I can't help it. This is what you and I made fist pump moment about, are these moments like that when you're watching a movie for the first time.
It really does. It is just action packed, full of incredible, even little details, and they're so Cameron-esque. Like when they show that city, I think it's called like Bridgehead. It's the human city, and Edie Falco is walking around in her mech, but it's not like the big clunky ones from the previous movie. Yeah. She's in like this nimble mech. She's like drinking coffee. Her drinking the coffee was one of my single favorite moments in the whole movie.
We talk a lot, like in acting and especially in improv, about like space work, like knowing your space, and there was an exercise I did in acting school about like holding the cup of coffee and like what that's like, and it was cool to see her do it like far away enough from her mouth, but then the cup, it was just like the idea behind it, the physics behind it was just like fun, and it was smart. I saw it in IMAX 3D HFR, which is high frame rate, which is, I looked up, that's how James Cameron apparently recommended you see it, but I was just closer than I wanted to be.
So one thing I noticed, and I wonder if anybody in the chat noticed this, there's this effect called I think it's motion smoothing. There's that famous video that Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie did. Yeah. And it was like actually years before Top Gun came out. But it was like, early on in the pandemic where we still thought it was coming out in like a few months. And they talk about going in to like turn the effect on your TV off because it makes sports look too sharp. Makes motion.
A lot of things that it just makes everything look worse.
Just makes things look like they're not really moving at the speed they're shot or something.
And they're not as crisp.
Yeah. And
soap opera effect, exactly. It all kind of blurs together to make it look like a super smooth ride that you're on.
Yeah, and I kind of hated, I used to notice that I didn't know what it was until I'd seen that video.
Yeah.
The first 20 or 30 minutes of this movie, the way that the characters were moving, they kind of seemed like they were moving too fast for me. And I was like, maybe it's just like the level of motion capture is so good now that it was my eye couldn't. But at first,
takes a minute. It really does take time for your eyes to adjust to this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I wasn't sure if anybody else noticed that, but it definitely was. It was a little strange. I couldn't tell if it was a good thing or a bad thing. I stopped noticing it after maybe 20 minutes. But anyway, the stuff in the Bridgehead though, when she's talking about, you see the city and you're like, how could the city have been built in a year? And then she's like, you see these little spiders crawling around. She's like, we came up building in 6 days. We've done more in a year here than you guys did in the previous 30. It's not the same thing as before. And it's like Edie Falco too, Carmela Soprano, and she's just a badass. She's always been tough.
Yeah, that's a great it's a perfect casting. I was gonna say almost an overcasting.
Yeah,
but it kind of, you need that role to be that good.
Yeah,
you really do, because it's just like, just powerful enough and important enough that's like I think all the supporting characters were really, really great. Like Sigourney's character, I loved. The little Took, I loved.
Yeah.
The two brothers, I knew that the older brother was the he's gonna die guy.
Really?
I just knew it from the beginning of the movie.
Because he's like, right.
He's just like cool and like he's the responsible older brother, but they never really dive much into his character. It's so much more about the younger brother. And I will say, I had to hold back crying more when he died.
Yeah.
It was really, really sad, and it's because like Zoe does such a good job. Her like guttural I mean, the true fist pump of this movie, and I saw a couple people talk about it, is just Zoe Saldana.
She's
like,
so
she
badass.
is such a badass in this movie. She does so great with her performance, and that like scream when he dies, like it killed me.
Yeah.
Killed me. And I was watching it next to my mom. She's like, I'm sad. And I was like, oh God, it like got me even more. But dude, the amount of kills that she has.
I know, and I love that. I think it's intentional by Cameron to make Jake Sully have a gun and her have a bow, and she just ruins people.
Destroys, and like Stephen Lang, there's the moment where it's like he like recognizes that it's like her feathers. He's like, oh, your calling card or whatever. And you think it's like, oh, the respect, blah, blah. But I think it's actually, throughout, as the movie goes on, he's intimidated by it. He's like scared of her. She killed him. Yeah. She killed him before.
Yep.
God, she's so awesome.
Yeah, the
kills she has are like way better than Legolas's.
A couple of people I wanted to shout out here in the chat. Earlier, I did see your name, Cody Seal, up here, and I hadn't seen you in the chat in a little while. Big salute to you, Cody. 5-star general.
Still shout you out every episode.
Every episode, you're always here, man, but it's nice to see you in here. And then just a handful of folks whose names I haven't seen before. What's up, Ingle? How you doing, buddy?
Big time salute. Jonathan Peck, don't forget about Jake Sully Power Axe. Yeah, he does go full on Patriot mode, which I absolutely love.
Yes. Chris Ingle here with the super chat. It's probably gonna pop up here in the.
Unless you change something.
Russell? Isn't Russell? Is that his name? He's been missing for a while.
Yeah, Russell.
Chris Ingle here says the Ben Bateman free for all champion. Here we did a little free for all.
There it is.
Here it is.
Please be quiet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Russell.
Christopher Ingle donated $10 through Super Chat. The Ben Bateman free for all champion here. I need to know the best action movie to watch with my kids, and why is it Top Gun?
It is Top Gun Maverick.
Maverick.
It's
gotta be.
You gotta do it with your kids, because I think it might be a little harder. I mean, I don't know how old your kids are, but I feel like, if you're still calling them your kids and they're not full grown adults, that like the old Top Gun might be a little harder to get on board with.
It's just not as good.
But they might, your love for it might sell it to them. But Top Gun Maverick is just incredible.
Depending on the age, I'd say, I'd mostly just say most of the ones that we've ranked at the top. Like, Warrior is extremely good. How could any kid not love Warrior?
Yeah.
I would say the same thing about The Rock. It's like
Warrior,
a movie that...
Warrior for sure.
Yeah. The Rock, like, as a kid, was like my favorite movie ever. Like, that movie's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I did love The Rock. I love Con Air so much.
Yeah.
That was like one of my absolute favorites. So was Air Force One.
I wonder if those movies for a kid today, I wwonder if they're as good.
I feel like if you're a kid, probably.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a whole lot to compare it to. Warrior is a great kids movie for sure.
Yeah.
I know. Ash. So the other night, Ash and I turned on White Noise. This is just like a slight tangential thought, and we'll get back to the episode. And then we end up like after watching it for 10 minutes, it just like wasn't the right pace that we wanted. I don't know if anyone's watched it in the chat. Let us know if you like it or not. And I was like, all right, because I first suggested Top Gun Maverick. She's like, I don't want to watch Top Gun. And I was like, all right, fine. So we turn on White Noise, and she's like, we both were whatever. And I was like, fine. But it was like, just try Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
And like, after even the very beginning, the first Mach 10 moment, because the other thing was she's like, why is he flying? It's like, he's flying everything. Like, he does his own stunts. And I was like, yes. And I was like, he flies the jets. Like, he's the guy.
You're like, he's in space going Mach 10,
no,
sweetie.
and then literally she goes, oh my God. She's like, is he going Mach 10? She goes, no. Oh my God. And then I was like, yes. I was like, you're in. You're in. She loved it.
Okay, it's also tangent because it's always gonna.
Why not?
We're always gonna go cruise on this show.
Cruise. Yep. We call it cruise control, ladies and gentlemen.
Cruise corner. They shot this behind the scenes featurette that was going viral last week about Cruise doing this crazy stunt for Dead Reckoning Part 1. Mm-hmm. And it's been shown a lot. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen it. It was all over Twitter, where he jumps off the crazy ramp with the motorcycle drops, and he does the free fall. And he shoots it a bunch of times. They show all the behind the scenes of it. They showed that segment at my theater last night.
Oh, really?
In Avatar.
That's awesome.
They showed it as the trailer, basically.
That's so cool.
I was sitting there, and I have seen the segment like several times now, but I was watching, just like waiting before I went to my seat. I wasn't even watching the segment. I was watching the people's faces.
Right in here.
And like the like audible reactions. I was so fucking happy. I was like, and also it made me think about Tom Cruise and the marketing machine behind his like ethos now.
Yeah.
It's the best marketing machine in Hollywood. The fact that he's committed to being this guy who does these stunts,
and it sells because they're incredible.
People want to see his movies because of it.
It's like cameras had to evolve so they could keep up with Tom Cruise so that we could actually watch what he's doing. Yeah. Because now you can appreciate it, right? Like even when he's just riding the motorcycle in Top Gun, you get that shot of him like with the on the bike straight down the barrel. But like you can see he's going really, really fast, and it's clearly just him doing it. Like that's one of those things that you just love. You talk about watching people's faces. There was during the whole dogfight, and them escaping from them like going down in the valley and shooting the target to getting out with the Sams and the dogfight. Like I looked and her face was like jaw dropped for like minutes.
Yeah.
Like minutes her jaw was dropped. It was such a good experience. So
let's watch that again tonight.
Big shout out to you, Chris. Thank you so much, and thank you for sending us on a cruise control tangent.
This was your cruise control moment.
Sick.
Yeah, nice.
That's sick.
It's the sound effect we're going to use for cruise control.
Yeah, I was going to make
every
it deeper,
week.
but I thought I should go high. It was cool.
We're going to keep rolling here through the show.
Keep on rolling through the show.
So anyway, guys, those are our fist pump moments. Be sure to put yours in the chat and leave them in the comments if you're watching this at a later date. Yeah. We're going to keep rolling here. Let's talk star profiles a little bit. So,
oh, look at that. Tay.
Big time salute to you. Tay. Hey, I saw your debut match in the Schmodown. Good seeing you in the ring again. Also, I did experience fist pump moments, but when I saw Endgame, agreed, Tay.
Yeah.
The Endgame has several, but I have never experienced a bigger fist pump in a movie theater than Cap getting the hammer.
The great fist pump of, I think, movie history will be Cap getting the hammer.
Yeah, it's the biggest one. I mean, I think there are a few that come to mind that are like really nuts. I remember seeing The Dark Knight. There's a few. Infinity War has a handful that are crazy. Yeah. Some of the biggest movies that I can remember anticipating, but the hammer moment is just like...
Yeah, the only thing that I can remember that's like somewhat, the girls. I remember people going crazy when Holland came back in our theater as well. Another theater moment that's like similarly kind of like breathtaking, if you will, to me was like the Quiet Place. Like experience. You talk about like in Endgame having that many people like cheer and jump out of their seats and scream. I've never been in a theater that was so quiet. Like as in a Quiet Place, where people weren't even eating their popcorn. Like when it was only when they were like by the waterfall, you heard a bunch of people like, like the exhale and drink their soda and eat a bunch of popcorn, and then it was silent again. Like those are two theater experiences I will always remember. And of course, the first Avatar.
Yeah, I just remember I was like at work and I was like, yeah, I saw Quiet Place in theater, and Art Ford was like, I saw Quiet Place, I ripped ass. Unicorn.
I bet he really is a true unicorn.
It's the greatest.
God, I wish I was in that theater when he did that. All right, so back to star profiles. And again, guys, Action Movie Anatomy, we did 250 episodes. We're following our old format, so if you don't know what star profiles is, where we break down the stars of the film and what they've done most recently. Sam Worthington. You guys probably know him, right? Under the Banner of Heaven. In 2022, he was in a bunch of episodes of that. A movie called 9 Bullets and a movie called The Last Son with Ben's favorite actor and musician.
His real name is Colson Baker. Also known as Machine Gun Kelly.
Sam Worthless. Wow, that's fighting words there, PLD.
It's a tough one. Drew and I used to have this category of 5 o'clock shadow white guys who are all kind of looked the same.
And like forgettable.
Yeah, they all played like the same. It's like the Ghai Courtneys, Sam Worthingtons. I hate to say it, the Joel Edgertons of the world.
Yeah. Hey, whoa. No, we can't bring Joel into that.
I love Joel.
He's directed a film.
He's
directed a film.
I said we used to. I have much nicer things to say.
I would like to stop the show and start it over and remove this content from the internet. Joel, we didn't mean it. He didn't mean it.
And he also made more interesting choices from the beginning too, because he was in Animal Kingdom like in the beginning. Exactly. But who's the other guy? The Swedish guy. What was his name?
Oh, I mean, there's Charlie Hunnam.
Oh, there's him. One. No, there's the guy who was in Safe House. And Rick Flag from Suicide Squad.
Yeah. That's.
Oh,
Rick Flag.
Joel
Kinnaman. Joel Kinnaman, yes.
Joel Kinnaman, yes. So basically, point being, it's just
the guys from Suicide Squad. Yeah, exactly.
It's a category of actors. Not to say that they aren't talented, because in fact, I think all of the people we just mentioned have shown talent in their various movies.
No, I actually like all of them more than I think when we first made that category.
Yeah, but it's just something about they're sort of interchangeably cast. Anyway, point being, Sam Worthington,
Francisco,
San Fran,
where I was born.
When the kaiju hit San Francisco, I'm a local American. Sam Worthington was kind of one of the originals of this category, and I got to tell you, if you dig deeper than this last 3 that we just mentioned, and you go back, you have to go back to that little stretch in the mid 2010s when he has the role in
The Clash.
No, that's earlier. That's right after.
That's like,
he has the role in Hacksaw Ridge. Yep. He's got the role in Everest. And he's got the role in one other like notable movie. It's a back-to-back-to-back that he does. And other than that, after 2017, he doesn't do another like movie of note that anyone really has seen or heard of for 5 years.
Yeah.
And he did a profile in Variety, I think it was, or Hollywood Reporter a few weeks ago, where he talked about getting sober. And he talked about he basically ran his career into the ground after Avatar. Mm-hmm. He basically talks about the fact that he got the job. He was a nobody. James Cameron fought really hard to put him in the movie. Liked his attitude a lot, and that his next few years was just a series of just getting darker and darker and just doing like a worse, just being unhappy. And finally, his wife gave him an ultimatum.
Was he like rough to deal with? Like, do you know any of like the depth of it at all?
He was kind of an asshole because he's kind of like a roughneck personality to begin with. That's what Cameron liked about him. That's why he wanted to cast him as Jake in the first place. And he had all these guys who were way more famous who wanted the Avatar role, but he got it. And so I think that attitude combined with just like not knowing how to deal with fame. I think he either hit a photographer or he got in a journalist's face at one point on a carpet. He did a bad job like running press. And so apparently his wife finally gave him an ultimatum. It was like, you have to get sober or we're leaving. Like the family, we're done. And so he did, took some time, and he talks about just like looking at things very differently and having a very different experience with his career afterwards. And
like I think even just as a result, all the movies that he's done kind of after that period, even the ones you just mentioned, like those. I think the choices that he made immediately after Avatar were like really tough. Yeah. And then I remember when he showed up in Hacksaw, I was like really impressed by him.
He's good.
I thought he did a really good job.
Yeah.
And I think he's actually really good in this movie.
Yeah.
I think, and this is, maybe we talked about this about Zoe in the first one, and that's so funny because like she's gotten so huge since then. Because I think I remember like talking about this in the first one about like the fact that like she is green and she's blue and she's never like just Zoe Saldana.
Oh sure, yeah,
you know, and it's interesting because you also heard her talk about how she felt like she was pigeonholed because of Marvel for a really long time, even though she's grateful. Blah 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 blah. It's just I don't know. Let's talk about Zoe because we got From Scratch here, Amsterdam, and the Atom Project is all things she did in 2022.
She's had a great run. I mean, you go back even a little further, obviously, and you've got Endgame back in 2019. She's part of the group of actors and actresses now when you talk about them where so much of their career has been swallowed up by the Marvel machine.
Yeah,
and it's hard. It's hard to look at their careers and not associate them. But she's at least lucky in the fact that she has a few other huge projects she's done.
People liked From Scratch. People watched the Atom Project. Amsterdam, I think people are also just kind of watching just because.
Yeah.
But I guess also to get back and circle back to the point of Sam Worthington is like Zoe Saldana has become a superstar.
Yeah.
The whole idea of like just being green and just being blue and just being an alien character, it felt like for so long, it doesn't really matter. She's surpassed that. Whereas like Sam Worthington right now would be a great time for a movie this big to have his face on it instead of just his name. Because I do think names and faces have two different effects on people and like staying power. So that's just one of those things with Sam. It's like, well, where's he going to go next? And how much weight will like the success of Avatar be attributed to him, or will it all just be James Cameron? You know,
it's also so wild to think about signing up for the first Avatar and then like the rest of your life as an actor is like tied to making these movies. Basically,
yeah,
it's like pretty wild. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And then Stephen Lang, it's wild if you go look at his career. He's one of these guys where I told Drew, I was like, I wonder if he's done some things the last few years, because Don't Breathe 2 came out last year. And I was like, I saw that movie in the theater and it wasn't good.
2 years ago, actually, Ben. 2 years ago.
It's 2023 now. Yeah, you're right.
Have some respect.
Thank you, Andrew. And I looked it up, and in 2022 he did 7 movies I hadn't heard of.
Yeah. You know what? And here's the thing with Stephen Lang. I'm sure if he was getting offered bigger projects more regularly, he would take those instead. But for him, whatever. Just get paid, bro. We love you. I think your fans will watch movies that you're in. People aren't going to go fill theaters for you, but like, he does a good job when he's in movies, and I enjoy him.
The one thing that is fascinating about this movie, if you compare it to the Marvel machine, is that as much as Anthony Russo and Joe Russo are stars, and they are, James Cameron's the star of Avatar. Avatar, the franchise, is the biggest star in the room, in the same way that the Avengers and Marvel is still the biggest star in the room. But when you go to who's second build, it's James Cameron.
I don't know. I might actually argue that James Cameron's bigger than Avatar.
He might be.
Like Marvel is definitely the biggest thing in that room.
Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, it's all Cameron. His background with this film and other films. He always writes his scripts. He often has collaborators. But this is, as we mentioned, his third film in 25 years. He's got this long career, tons and tons of successes. How do you feel about James Cameron right now? If I'm asking you after, and we're about 1.4 billion worldwide so far on this film. It's been out for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Maybe going on 3 internationally.
It's crazy, because if it was any other movie, anyone else, it would be astounding. Because it's James Cameron and Avatar 2. It's like, well, I don't know. Might not be able to make the next ones.
It opened in the U.S. just over 2 weeks ago. So that's where we're at. Are you buying or are you selling on James Cameron right now?
Right now, going into Avatar 3, I'm buying James Cameron.
You're buying?
100%. But I do think that after Avatar 3, I'm selling James Cameron.
Interesting.
And there's reasons for that. Is I think that this should just be a good trilogy. Even though I already know he's got 4 and 5 already docked up and ready to go, I think that this should just end at a trilogy. It should end at a trilogy with Stephen Lang dying and like, the Sully's clan taking over and leading on as Jake and Neytiri get old and whatever, like, and then like Spider, I don't know, whatever. It's just left open-ended. He's the new villain, and then we just never see 4 and 5. Just because, like, I don't think people are going to because what's going to happen, right? So we saw Avatar 1, and it was this crazy experience, this crazy visual experience you've never seen before. You watch Avatar 2, and you're like, wow, this feels like similar to how I felt watching Avatar 1, because what they've done with the water and just the world building, it's incredible. And they'll probably do it again with Avatar 3. And you know what? They'll probably do it to an extent in Avatar 4 and 5. But with the, I guess, lack of time in between, I don't think there's going to be something visually like so incredible that blows my mind in 4 and 5 that's going to make me be like, oh yeah, Avatar movies, they need to keep happening. I think that it's just too much. And I think that it's wasted talent from James Cameron. I think he should really, if he could do like other movies or other projects at the same time, then maybe that'd be a different conversation. But like, would they be as good because he's not solely focusing his attention on it like he always has in his career? I want to see James Cameron. I'll buy him through Avatar 3. After that, I'm selling if he's still an Avatar only guy. What about you?
Buying James Cameron
Forever.
Yeah, I'm buying him forever. There's only a couple things that could happen that would blow this, as far as I'm concerned. I think it should be a trilogy. I don't think he should make the 4th and 5th movie.
Okay.
But he also said in that interview recently that for this movie to break even, it would have to be like the 2nd or 3rd or 4th highest grossing movie of all time, which suggests that it has to make like $2 billion to break even. Yep. I think that was an inaccurate report. I think I also read somewhere that 1.2 was the break even point on this movie. But either way, I think a lot of the intrigue for this movie is fueled by the fact that it's been 13 years. What's he going to do? How's it going to look? Is it going to stand up? And if another Avatar movie, like the third one comes out like 2 years from now, I think, right? If the fourth one comes out 4 years from now, I don't think technology will have progressed enough.
There's not. I mean, yeah, director says I can't see how they can beat the underwater sequences here with the sequels, and I agree because like what they did with the underwater stuff is incredible, and it really does show through. And I think they did take that 3D and next level it. And I agree with what you're saying. I don't think that technology, and that's kind of what I was saying too, is technology will not advance enough in the next 10 years, I think, or let's go 6 years, to give us like, oh my god, like 4 needs to happen, and if it does. That should be spent on a different movie.
Cruise is already going to space. Cameron can't beat him there.
Can't beat him there.
You can't put the Na'vi in space.
He's already there.
Yeah, it also like would be it would be less impressive to have CGI characters in space than it would be to have Tom Cruise in space.
Yes.
Now, if Tom Cruise fought a Na'vi in space,
he's the villain.
Crossover.
In 4. If he's the villain in 4 and 5, I could be in on that.
So the reason I think I'm buying is because I think he said in that interview that if it doesn't do well enough, he's not going to make 4 and 5. That was the first like level-headed thing about this that I'd heard him say publicly.
And I would really hope. I mean, but that's the thing is like I don't really want them to do poorly so that they're not made. I want him to just stop making them. You know, I don't want him to like. I don't want the Avatar 4 to just be or 3 to just be dog shit.
Yeah,
and that's the thing is that was the other thing I was gonna have to or as a thesis was like 3 needs to be a situation where it's the best story he's told in 3 movies. He has to sum it up like with the best writing he's had because like visually I don't think it's gonna do it. And I think for this trilogy to be remembered well, he has to like next level his storytelling.
You know what the one thing that they could do that would make me lose all faith in Avatar would be? Announcing they were doing some prestige television series Avatar spinoff.
Yeah.
If I heard that, it would be the single like I'd like vomit. I'd be like, guys, please don't.
Please, anything but this.
I'm at the point now when I hear that about movie franchises and stuff, and they're like, we're spinning it off into this. I'm just like, please don't. I don't want to feel like the thing I liked so much is cheapened by this stupid fucking series that like some people are gonna watch and be like, actually, the Snowpiercer series was pretty good. And it's like. Right. Yeah, but like no one cares about the Snowpiercer series when the movie is incredible by this legendary director. Yeah. The fact that there even is a TV series cheapens the movie existing, I feel like. I don't know, it's just that's in general, it's like one of my biggest pet peeves.
So there's a couple people that have mentioned this and it sounds like it might just be a rumor, but if the 4th and 5th movie did happen and they did go to Earth, how would you feel about that?
God, the Na'vi go to Earth?
It feels the opposite of their whole message. Their whole thing. They just want to like live where they live and be happy. So going to Earth feels odd.
Yeah, it'd be weird. I mean, like Jake Sully drinking a Starbucks as a.
But like, what would they go to Earth for?
Yeah,
to colonize it, to kill them.
Maybe their world is like getting destroyed or something. Global warming is happening, so they go to Earth instead.
Or they go to Earth to save Earth.
Right. With water.
Now
I just can't see them making a 4th or 5th movie that I'd be satisfied with, but I don't think they're going to. I think Cameron's going to pivot. I think there's no way 3 will do as well as... Even 2 is not going to do as well as 1. It's going to do well. It's going to slow down, though, and I don't think 3 will do as well as 2. So I feel like the diminishing returns on that will hopefully convince them to not make 4 and 5. But you know what? You just never know.
It's got a 7.9 on IMDb, which I got to admit, I'm like a little surprised. I thought that this movie would break the top 250 because like I feel like movies, because I feel like this movie is pretty good. I think it's above average. And I feel like a movie that's this large, right when they come out, sometimes they crack the top 250 or like the top 220 or something, and sometimes they just fall right out pretty quickly. But it's got a 7.9 on IMDb, no 250, a 77% on the tomato meter, and 92% from the audience. I would definitely have given it a positive. Like I told you, it's like I actually really loved this movie. I had a really, really great time. Obviously it was long, but like I had really prepared myself for how overly long it was going to be. I loved it. I thought like, you know, when you ask about buy or sell on James Cameron, and even when I say sell, I'm not betting against him. I just don't really want it anymore. And if I was going to invest, I wouldn't invest in it. But I always want him to keep doing what he does because I do think this movie was like beautiful. I thought the story was great. It's funny because the next segment we have here is favorite line. Do you have a favorite line or no?
No, that always happens though with the new movies we watch.
Movies because it's hard to remember. But I will say I was like if I had to force one, I would say it's solely stick together because I think it really epitomizes the writing that James Cameron has done for these first two movies. It's corny, it's cheesy. They say it at the end when they survive. It's not that in depth. Like, it's just like, that's not what these movies, I guess, are about, right? It's not about this deep story like that's gonna blow your mind or change the way you think. Maybe it is a little bit about like colonization, or maybe even about like being a vegetarian or things like that. But the solely stick together thing, I was just like, this is stupid, but also this is going to come up like numerous times throughout this movie. Like the first time I heard it, I was like, this is probably going to come up at the end of the movie.
I forgot the strong heart line is from the first movie. That's what she says about Jake when she first meets him.
Yeah.
I put the first one on again, and so when I heard it in the first one, it reminded me of, and I was like, yeah, I mean, there's some good. There's definitely some of that stuff that's good. So anyway, and then I'm IMDb, you mentioned 7.9. Tomatoes, you got a 77 from critics, which is actually pretty high for critics, and 92 by the audience, which is really high for the audience. So that only leaves one last thing we do before we get to the final segment of the show. There are 3 action movie categories: totally ridiculous, totally legitimate, and ridiculously legitimate. Totally legitimate movies are like dramatic. They're held together, like very, very grounded movies. You don't really laugh ever. They just feel very good.
And if you do laugh, it's because it's like that moment of comedy. Like if you're watching Saving Private Ryan, for instance, that is a totally legitimate movie.
Totally ridiculous is going to be like, you know, Hobbs and Shaw or Pacific Rim
Demolition Man,
2. Demolition.
Shells.
Yeah, sometimes it's really silly. Sometimes it's like intentionally really silly, but just, you know, you're laughing all throughout. It's popcorn. It's fun. There's not a lot of dramatic stakes in those movies. And then the middle category, which is ridiculously legitimate, those are going to be movies like The Rock. There'll be movies like... I
think we put Gladiator in there, even though I wasn't happy about it.
Because it's a little silly.
Kind of broke my heart.
Yeah. And in general, they're movies that are a little sillier, but they're grounded by one really dramatic, strong trait. Often it can be like an Oscar-worthy performance, one sequence, or a storyline that's like pretty emotional, actually. Yeah. Something like that.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Yes, Edge of Tomorrow is a great example of that. So,
will you watch this again in theaters before you get to this?
Avatar 2: The Way of Water? Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Will you?
Maybe.
Really?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
I would like to get like a great seat in a better spot, like right in the middle.
Did you guys
like a month?
Were you IMAX 3D or just 3D?
IMAX 3D.
Yeah.
High frame rate.
Nice. Yeah, me too.
So anyway, back to the categories: totally ridiculous, totally legitimate, or ridiculously legitimate. Where are you going?
I think I give this movie totally legitimate.
I think I do too.
Yeah.
I think that he does a good enough job spending time to build this world to where I don't really ever second guess anything. There's nothing that I kind of like look down at or laugh at. I mean, the writing again is kind of like, but like the writing can be not great or like not innovative, and it still is legitimate, right? Like even with, again, I've shouted out the director here like numerous times, a lot of bro this and bro that for sure. It felt like the like James Cameron just writing like young men, just like all they say is bro, or if they're on an island, young people on an island, all they say is bro. He definitely overused it, but still, I do think it was totally legit.
They say cuz too.
They do.
You know, we didn't talk about, there was a couple small things. I don't know if they swing this, but the fact that like they have the one sequence of mining for like genius whale anti-aging brain, they literally bring it up and it lasts like 42 seconds. They never introduce it. They never go back to it.
No.
They just literally have this one moment, and it's the same exact moment that Giovanni Ribisi has in the first movie when he's like 1 little kilo of this unobtainium is why we're on. It pays for everything, and it's like the exact same scene, which is sort of silly that they did that. I also did think that the Sigourney Weaver daughter character, like, she has these powers that are basically never actually explained.
She could just like control things she's Zahalu's with.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't say Zahalu enough on this episode. That's a shame.
And I do actually think that if you were looking for a way to make this movie a little shorter, because this movie's 3 hours and 10 minutes, you could have cut her entire character from the movie.
You really could have, because as much as I actually really liked that character, you don't really need her relationship with Spider. And even though she does save them a couple times with her like cool powers, she's like one of those kids at the end of Logan.
Yeah.
Right? She has like all these powers. Yeah. But, like hers aren't really defined.
You don't know who her dad is. It never gets revealed.
Even though I liked it, even though I really
Yeah,
liked her, that's
yeah.
actually a really interesting point. You could just completely cut her character.
Even the family only having 3 kids is like kind of easier in some ways.
Mm-hmm,
She's like, anyway, not to say that I didn't like it, but we didn't criticize any of that stuff. And I think that some of that is maybe, to me, this is right on the line. I'm actually going to audible. I'm going to say this is ridiculous, legitimate.
Why? What happened?
I just was thinking about that stuff and the length of it. And
But that doesn't make it less legitimate just because it's longer.
The director
has-
donated $10. Hey guys, thanks for the shout outs. Salute and happy 2023.
Happy New Year to you, brother. But hold on. Back up how does that make it less legitimate? What changed? I don't understand.
just like some of the stuff that I found myself criticizing and thought was a little sillier while I was watching, and I didn't bring any of it up, and then I was just remembering it, and then I was just remembering that, like, from a storytelling perspective and from like a character perspective, and like some of the stuff that happened in the movie, it felt a little silly enough that I could be like, I don't think I'm gonna put this, like, I'm not gonna be like Prisoners, Avatar 2, and like put them next to each other.
That's not the same thing. I think a movie that's totally legitimate is still like
It's based on like tone, you're saying, sort of more than
I think
anything
it's
else.
also just based. I mean, you're basing this strictly off of context from something that like you saw before. You think it's lame. They like reused it, but again, I still think it's like, it doesn't matter. I still think it's like a legitimate thing. I don't think it makes it less legitimate. It's just reused.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, on the line, just right on the line. I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. So the final thing that we have to do on the show is
The pitch.
what are you doing over here?
I didn't hear who gave that donation a second ago.
I said the director.
I didn't hear that. I didn't want to ask you, so I was just looking it up. And now you've called out that I was looking it up, so I didn't have to do it stealthily anyway.
Okay, it's good.
It was a stealth move.
It was.
You ruined the mission.
We did. So for the pitch, I think we are going to put up a poll on the Patreon, like we talked about, patreon.com/team action. There's a bunch of movies up there. Did you have any inspiration behind the handful of movies that you chose?
There was a little bit. You know, we obviously started this show out last week. The first episode was Air Force One, which was the first episode we ever did. The second episode, the infamous no air conditioning episode, is the Edge of Tomorrow episode.
I should sweat. I'll sweat.
Just
on this
wear.
one. Just wear like
turn up the
7
heat.
layers. Yeah.
Put a heater in here. So that is the second episode. So I think that's one of the options. We love the Knives Out movies. I believe we did the first one on the first show. I'm not 100% about that, but I think we did.
I love the first Knives Out movie.
So the fact that we could
Knives
do the first Knives Out or the new Knives Out, because everyone's watching that, and both are being watched right now. They're both phenomenal.
Glass Onion. We could just call them Knives Out and Glass Onion, but we enjoy Knives Out 1 and Knives Out 2.
Yep. Another one that we wrote down was Prisoners. It's on Netflix right now. I'm seeing a lot of people post about it.
I was watching it.
It's being watched a lot.
Yep.
It's a movie that I definitely think has grown in a lot of people's estimation over the years. Because
You and I have both watched it in the last week.
it's so good. It's one of my favorite movies, and I think it's just a movie that's kind of brutal to watch, and so it is. But I think as it's lived on like streaming, more and more people have found it, and people are like, wait, this is like
It's just really good.
well, it's also like the actors involved and the director. It's like one of the most prominent directors in Hollywood right now who keeps getting more famous, and all of these like just unreal performers, right?
Well, that and also like, I was gonna say the performers. All their careers have just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Like Gyllenhaal and Jackman have become like infamous, and then Paul Dano because of the Batman. I think everyone that didn't know who he was now definitely knows who he
Viola
is.
Davis, Melissa Leo. I
Yeah.
mean, the cast is crazy. It's a bunch of Oscar
Good.
winners.
Yeah.
You know?
Love that movie.
Yeah, so I think those are the 4 that we had ideas on. We may discuss amongst ourselves, and if we come up with a different option to swap one of those out, we might. But patreon.com/team action. Is it Action Industries or Team Action?
/Team Action.
/Team Action. Yep. And that is where you can go vote. So go check that out. We won't be here next week because I'll be out of town, but the following week we're going to do an episode on this. It'll stream at an unlisted link for any one of you who are patrons. And you guys will be able to interact with us, and then at 6:00 it goes up and you guys can all watch it. If you have ideas for movies you'd like us to cover, leave them in the comments on this video, because we may get inspiration from your comments, and let us know what direction you want us to go with this.
There's no rules anymore.
Wow.
On AMA 2.0. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for hanging out with us. Thanks for watching the show. Big shout out to all of our generals in the Action Army. Call sign Kilmer. Big time salute to you. Great seeing you in the chat today. Quiz show, Public Enemy #1, Kaiju, ACP, Robin, Kamura, Moses Galactus, Bartab, Party J,
24601. Desperado, The Slap, and Godfather. Big time salute to you guys. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you guys same time, same place in just 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Bye, everybody.
No slow fade up, huh?
Just gonna do it like this. They can hear it. Now it's gonna be like, bye, guys. We're still on right now, actually. I did turn it off.
Oh, hey guys.
All right, we're gone.